my children! And for tonight's final tale of terror in this year's Longbox of the Damned, it is time for something a little more classy, sophisticated, and intelligent. So, behold the tale of Sherlock Holmes, as he fights zombies! In London of 1854, a meteor crashes to Earth, pieces of it falling into various parts of the London water supply. A few months later, zombies begin to rise as a plague spreads through London. And yet this is apparently forgotten 44 years later, as Sherlock Holmes defeats a man who has been using hypnosis to learn the secrets of the wealthy of London. Until it is revealed that he is a robot! Who knew I'd be covering another zombies versus robots tale, eh? While Holmes studies the shockingly sophisticated automaton, which seemed to be controlled from afar, some workers in London unearth a segment of the town that contains a still functional zombie, which bites some workers. All but one are killed, the remaining one soon turning into a zombie while being confined to a hospital. Inspector Lestrade summons Holmes for his assistance, but both parties are quickly told to hush up and cease their investigation into this matter by the Queen's Secret Service under pain of imprisonment. Of course, Holmes and Watson refuse to sit down when the dead are walking, so journey down into the construction tunnels themselves to find out the source of the zombie. Digging deeper into the tunnels, they discover an entire late Elizabethan street has been buried under London. Although the mystery deepens as well, as they discover a postman in his satchel, with letters dated from last July. Unfortunately, before they can consider that evidence, the zombies still under the ground rise up and begin their own march upon the famous duo. They are soon rescued by heavily armored individuals wielding an assortment of weapons that destroy the zombie horde. They're confronted by Sherlock's brother, Mycroft, who brings them away to explain everything. While in Whitechapel, Professor Moriarty shrugs off the loss of the zombies in the tunnel, proclaiming that the advantage of an army of the dead is that you can always make more. Also, he might be a zombie himself. Would certainly explain how he and Holmes survived the whole Reichenbach Falls thing. They bring up the real-life Dr. John Snow and Reverend Henry Whitehead, who in 1854 had traced a cholera outbreak through the contamination of water by human waste, which led to the replacement of the Broad Street pump. However, Mycroft says that there were more victims of the disease than what was popularly believed. Dr. Snow in this story spearheaded an effort to cut off the zombie uprising before it could spread any further, slaughtering all the infected in the area, and the matter was buried. Mycroft has no explanation for the recently infected down in the tunnels. Sherlock, however, speculates that they must have been deliberately infected for some nefarious purpose. Unfortunately, before they can speculate any further on who could do such a thing, Moriarty unleashes his army of the dead, forcing Holmes and Watson to flee back to Baker Street, where Holmes uncovers records of the comet's arrival on Earth and the speculation that microscopic life could have infected the water in 1854. And indeed, the book that postulates the theory of microscopic life was written by none other than Professor Moriarty. We see a flashback to, indeed, the fight at Reichenbach Falls. Wait, I was right about that? Huh. See, this is why you should always pay attention to me first about these things, my children. An assistant of Moriarty's retrieved his body and injected him with certain chemicals that, while at first made him crazed, restored him to life. Or a semblance of life, at least. Moriarty's designs are no less than world domination, an empire of the dead across the entire world. His servant, Sebastian, is less than enthusiastic about this, but Moriarty insists he take the formula. It needs to be administered to the living in order for their consciousness to remain after death, lest the alternative be ripped apart by his zombies. He flees, though they bite on his arm, proclaiming that Moriarty is mad. Although, as the good professor points out, he is a reanimated corpse with a barely reined-in craving for human flesh, and it is only now that he questions his sanity. On Baker Street, Holmes and Watson are holed up with their maid, Mrs. Hudson, trying to reason out a plan.
But fortunately, aid finally comes. Tanks and military sent by Mycroft to retrieve them. Sebastian arrives, dying from his various bites, and warns Holmes of Moriarty's involvement and his plan for devastation and conquest. The British government withdraws to Windsor Castle, Moriarty claiming Buckingham for himself, asking Holmes for his assistance in combating Moriarty. They have Moriarty contained for the time being, but his forces grow stronger and will soon overrun them. Holmes' suggested tactic is to assassinate Moriarty. He is the one who directs the zombies, and they can be dealt with without his oversight. Unfortunately, to get to him, it will mean razing London to the ground, which Holmes encourages lest England become a fortress of the ravenous dead. They eventually authorize the plan, though they do not wish to send anyone in to try to personally deal with Moriarty, leaving him to burn with the rest of the dead. As such, Mycroft arranges for Holmes and Watson to be sent into England to try to deal with him directly. Thus, using his detective skills, Holmes tracks Moriarty back to Whitechapel, though he only finds an automaton of him waiting, revealing that he was behind the earlier robot, the hypnosis an elaborate scheme to discover England's contingency plans in the event of some sort of insurgent army like this. Holmes challenges Moriarty to fight him face to face, but he refuses. He is reborn, a deity of the dead, and thus is above such petty conflict. Our heroes flee and head to Buckingham Palace, reasoning that such a madman would install himself on the throne of an empire at the appropriate locale. Holmes confronts Moriarty, who no longer wishes to fight in a gentlemanly fashion, and shoots at Holmes, who responds in kind by tossing a grenade at him.
Explosives really should be the final answer to any detective story, I think.
After a fight with his decaying corpse, Holmes is able to decapitate Moriarty as Watson launches a signal flare for the warships unleashing their payload on the city, in particular an airship that drops bombs on the palace. Holmes and Watson survive, and within 3 months the dead are cleared and the city begins being rebuilt, though they are forced to sign the Official Secrets Act to keep this information to themselves and out of print.
Must have been a really confusing weekend for any Londoners who survived then.
However, while Holmes remains optimistic about the new century dawning, it would seem that Moriarty survived and has begun new experiments in a hidden laboratory.
But that is a tale for another year, my children. This one ends, autumn's descent is underway. As it gets colder, don't forget to open up a horror story during this winter. And warm yourself up on tales of fire burning away zombies.